Good evening. I would like to welcome everyone to the Henry County Zoning Board meeting of Thursday, September 28, 2017. This meeting is being televised live on Charter Channel 180 and AT&T UVerse Channel 99, and will rebroadcast every Thursday at 7:30 p.m., Saturday at 12:30 p.m., and is available by video on demand on the county website. Now would be a good time to turn off your cell phones and laptops. If you wish to speak, you will need to fill out a public speaking card. We allot 10 minutes for those speaking in favor of a case and 10 minutes for those speaking in opposition of a case. For example, if 10 people wish to speak, they all share in the 10-minute slot, and so on. Address the board, not the audience. When you come to speak, those applicants presenting their case are counted as those speaking in favor of a case and share the 10-minute slot. We will now hear the invocation by Mr. Richard Fratwell.
Let us pray. God, thank you for this day you've given us, and help all of us to be more mindful each day of our many blessings. Tonight, lead us through the meeting. Give us all the wisdom to change the things we should, the peace to accept what we should not, and the understanding to know the difference. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The meeting is now called to order. Stacy, do we have any housekeeping we need to take care of today?
Yes, sir. The case Comp AM 1707 for Invictus, Development of Tampa, Florida, was inadvertently advertised as Comp AM 1708. The correct case number is Comp AM 1707. Also, case RZ 1718 for Delbert Black for property on Hearn Road was advertised, but it has been postponed by the applicant.
It has been postponed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we won't hear that case, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay. Have a second? It's been motioned by Mr. Fretwell, second by Mr. Patterson. All in favor? Any discussion? Okay. All right. Any staff comments?
Just the comments that we had mentioned before, Mr. Chair.
We'll move forward and hear the first case.
CU 1705, Viasat Incorporated of Carlsbad, California, requests a conditional use for property located at 457 Thurman Road in land lot 158 of the 12th District. The property consists of 3.00 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a wireless communication facility in District 5, and the report is presented by Zane Grinnell, Planner 1.
Okay.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Board. The request before you tonight is a conditional use for a wireless communication facility at 457 Thurman Road, near the intersection of Thurman and Patilla Road. The property sits on 3 acres and is currently zoned RA Residential Agricultural. The wireless communication facility consists of a 16.5-foot tall, 12-foot diameter satellite structure, which the applicant claims will work with their current satellite network to provide broadband internet services to aircraft traveling in the Metro Atlanta airspace. The satellite is to be contained within a 30-foot by 40-foot compound enclosed by a 7-foot high fence and surrounded by a vegetative buffer. Staff recommendation is based on the assessment of criteria set forth in section 7.05.00 of the Unified Land Development Code, and for that, staff is recommending approval of the request. Are there any questions?
Do any staff, when board members have any questions for staff now?
Yeah, I have a question for staff. Staff, there's been some concerns about this being a telecommunication or satellite. Do you have any information or what determinations have we decided? Is this actually a cell tower or a telecommunication, or what exactly is it?
So staff has determined that this particular wireless communication facility isn't your typical monopole, is in fact a satellite, which in all other cases, the monopole is there to increase cell coverage, and typically a satellite would be co-located on one of these towers. However, in this instance, the satellite itself is too large to be co-located and weighs too much, so it is being put aside and is not able to co-locate. So it's a standing structure by itself.
Okay. That's all I have at this time.
Any other board members have any questions for staff? If not, we want the applicant to please come up. Please state your name and address for the record. And do you have anything that you would like to add to staff comments?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, board, chairman. My name is Jeffrey Evans. I'm with KGB Co. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Viasat Incorporated of Carlsbad, California. Wanted to just briefly add a little bit of clarity to the comments from staff with respect to the question that was raised. This facility, as was already mentioned, is a 16.5-foot satellite dish. It is not designed for any transmission of cellular service whatsoever. It doesn't transmit broadly. It transmits from ground to satellite only, and its intended use is to provide broadband service to air traffic passing through the airspace in the Atlanta metro area. You could see that it's about 12 miles due east of the Hartsfield Atlanta Airport, so it's strategically located and very well situated for this use. As staff mentioned, it is approximately 9,000 pounds or 4.5 tons in weight, and it's designed to be ground mounted. The diameter is about 12 feet in width, and the important point to bring out is its transmission base. It's angled at a 47-degree angle straight up, and it's designed to shoot a beam to and from the satellite. So those are, hopefully that answers the questions that were raised to staff as to its use and to exactly what it is. It is a satellite dish. It is not what we would call a telecommunications tower. It is determined that it meets the requirements of a wireless communication facility simply because it is transmitting radio signals. That's what qualifies it to be what they call a wireless communication facility. But other than that, its use is entirely different. As it was stated, the location is 457 Thurman Road, which is just near the intersection of Walden Way and Thurman Road in Stockbridge. Now, what we have here, they're existing. I wanted to bring the board's attention to this. I wanted to put a picture right here. Here's a picture of the facility from the viewpoint of looking directly from the street, facing the lot where the property is, where the dish will be situated. As you can see, is there a way to zoom in a little? Is there a way to zoom in? No? Yes? Okay. There you go. Good. Thank you. All right, that's good. The point there, you could barely see the facility from the street view that shows how much of it will be visible without any landscaping. Now, what we wanted to point out, as required by the building code, we are enclosing this facility within a 7-foot fenced compound, and we will have a landscape buffer which will cover the front portion, which I'll show you now. So now basically you see that this is the only vantage point that you will have, and this is where traffic passes through and to and from that area. That's the only vantage point where it will be seen. The other views that are required will show vantage points from each side. This is the general viewpoint where the shots were taken. This is looking south. Looking north. And looking east. So the other vantage point we've already shown you. So the reason that it was specifically chosen was if you can look at this particular viewpoint here, the location was selected primarily because it has some unique characteristics. As you can see, there's tree cover around the location, but yet there's a bit of pasture behind it so that there's no impedance of the signal going from ground to satellite. So that was the important consideration in selecting this. We also wanted to make it as visually non-intrusive as we could, and we wanted to put it in an area that had a natural buffer of its own that we could add to even add a little bit more aesthetic appeal to it. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we're not a hindrance at all to the community. We want to make sure that it's innocuous as possible, and that was our intent. We've complied with all of the requirements of the FCC and also of the Henry County Planning and Zoning Code as it relates to wireless communication facilities. We, as staff has already mentioned, we received a recommendation for approval from staff, and we respectfully request the board to approve our application. I would like to reserve the rest of the time for questions of the board if it would have any of me at this time.
Do any board members have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have an additional question. Was there any other sites actually looked at,
Yes.
opposed to just this site?
Yes, we presented a report that indicated the sites. I think we had about 3 or 4 other sites that were selected. There were various reasons why they were turned down. One of the landlords was not interested. The other was had some obstruction problems that rendered it not suitable for the particular use. So this is the one that we selected. The other reason too is, as you can see, there's already a wireless communication facility there, and we felt that the particular use would be, because of the area being sort of quasi-rural and not much vehicular or foot traffic in the area, we thought there would be the least amount of intrusion for the community to have it here.
Well, that's one of the concerns, is it being a wireless communication already there, and you're within that 1 mile radius of that wireless, and that is a concern.
That's a very good point.
Right.
That's a very good point. We addressed that. The only reason that we addressed that particular portion of the code simply because of the fact that the facility is 9,000 feet in weight, 9,000 pounds in weight. It just precludes us from being able to co-locate it or put it on top of an existing structure. So it didn't, what we did is we presented that case to staff and they agreed with our conclusion.
Now, that first picture that you put there, was that a mock of it there, or is that some other satellite at that location?
That was a photo simulation of the actual satellite, what it's actually going to look like
Okay.
on the premises.
So from the street view, you'll be able to see that at that point like that?
That really, the only thing that you'll be able to see, that's a zoomed in picture. If you're walking up or driving by, you won't be able to see the facility at all once we put the landscaping in.
I don't have any other questions at this point.
Okay.
Any other board members have any questions for the applicant?
You mentioned you'll be adding some landscaping
Yes.
around the structure.
Code requires that we put a 15-foot buffer around it.
And then who will be responsible for keeping up with that?
The applicant, and in conjunction with the property owner, we'll be working with them. And the code requires it, so we comply with all the requirements of the code.
And that brings us back to another question. That 15-foot buffer, what is that composed of? What
Typically Leland, some evergreen Leland cypress type trees that will, that are not deciduous, that won't shed, and we want to keep those in front so that we will not be able to be, the facility won't be able to be viewed from street view.
Okay. And you also indicated that this is a communication for aircraft.
Yes.
What's that sole purpose? What is it?
Broadband internet service on a plane.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I knew that for a while. Okay.
It's very useful for anybody traveling to and forth.
Okay. All right. I don't have anything.
Okay, any other questions by board members for the applicant? Okay, applicant, you may be seated.
Thank you.
We're going to use the rest of the time for people wanting to speak in favor of this proposal. Anybody that wants to speak in favor, that means that you just have 10 minutes to share. So anybody want to speak in favor, please come forward at this time. Please make sure you state your name and your address. Last call for people that want to speak in favor. Okay. Now, if there is anybody that wants to speak in opposition, we ask that you would come forward. You have 10 minutes to share. So I would like this, all that want to speak in opposition, need you to go ahead and stand and lined up. That way we'll know who's going to be coming up. Please state your name and please state your address.
My name is Penelope Sierra, and I live at 175 Walden Way in Stockbridge, Georgia. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here in front of the Henry County Zoning Advisory Board members about my concerns. This is a first for me showing up at a zoning and planning meeting, and I hope I don't seem too nervous or intimidated. But my main concern is that there is already a wireless communication facility, and it's approximately 400 yards from my home there on Walden Way. The map isn't up there, but it's at the address is the corner of Walden Way and Thurman Road. And so it's approximately 400 yards from my house, and it's even closer to my property line. There is already the wireless, the cell phone tower there, and so I don't have a problem with that, but I simply do not want another wireless communication facility going up next to the existing one. This appears to me, when I looked at the county website, to be in violation of the county, the zoning ordinances. The sign alerting the public on the road that there was going to be a zoning meeting says that it is for a wireless communication facility. And also the application made by Viasat is for a wireless communication facility. Now, according to the Henry County Planning and Zoning Unified Land Development Code, which I took the time to look at, Chapter 7, Section 7.05.09, letter G, about separation requirements, number 1, it states, freestanding wireless communication facilities located within residential zoning districts shall not be located within 1 mile of another freestanding wireless communication facility. Again, and I'm sure there are good reasons why this is in the county code. The proposed wireless communication facility is certainly nowhere near 1 mile from the existing one. I would like someone to exactly tell me how close it is to that cell phone tower. I think it would be more adequately measured in feet or yards or meters. Now, I am aware that embedded in the Viasat's request, there is a suggestion, and I think it was suggested here also by Viasat's representative, their local representative, Jeffrey Evans, that the proposed 4.5-ton transmitting and receiving satellite dish is not a wireless communication facility. This is very confusing. How do you request a wireless communication facility and then suggest that that's not really what you're requesting? I've accessed multiple sources that indicate that it is a wireless communication facility, and I understand that it's for transmitting broadband internet services to aircraft. But it has an antenna in it that means that it's communicating, that it is communications equipment, it's wireless, and it's a facility with a support structure. I don't know how you can argue that it's not a wireless communication facility. That's what the sign says the zoning meeting is about. That's what the request was made for. It's just confusing. Before this meeting, before coming here, I addressed my concerns to my District 5 representative, DeLander Nelson, and I thank him for hearing me on the phone. And I also spoke with Zane Grinnell here to my side. And I spoke with Stacy Jordan, and we communicated via email. And he said he would look into this and get clarity, and perhaps, there hasn't really been time to get clarity. So maybe this needs to be postponed so there is really clarity about, is this a wireless communication facility or not? And you can understand my concern is a homeowner that I don't want two beside me, and especially if it's in violation of county code. So this is a first for me speaking up, and I know that I don't think this is a need for the citizens of Henry County. It may be a wish or a desire on the part of Viasat's client, and I would like to know who their client is, by the way. They're building the satellite for whom? Is it for some airline that wants to increase revenues by allowing people to get online quickly while they're up in the air? I don't know. It's their wish, their desire. I don't know that it serves the majority of Henry County citizens. But the main point is that I question whether it is really legal according to the codes that the county has. I guess I have more to say, but I don't want to take up more time. I think that suffices what I need to say. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you for your time and your comments. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in opposition? We have 3 minutes and 18 seconds left. Anybody else that wants to speak in opposition? Final call for anybody else that wants to speak in opposition. Okay. All right. Do the board members have any further questions for the applicant?
Well, I do have a question for staff, and I guess, Stacy, can we clarify this, or have we thoroughly clarified where we are with this? Is this a telecommunication? Are we borderline in terms of legal aspects of it, or what?
No, it's not my interpretation that we're borderline of it. It is certainly a wireless communications facility, as our ordinance describes it. For us, it's certainly a new animal. Usually what we're used to seeing is a monopole or a lattice tower or something that provides cell phone service to citizens. And so this is very different. I was able to speak with staff. I was able to speak with the director. And when we talked about it, what we determined, our interpretation of the code, is that the reason why there's the 1 mile separation requirement is to give an incentive for these cell phone providers to co-locate on an existing monopole or lattice tower. And even though this is very different because of the nature of this 16-foot tall, 12-foot diameter satellite dish, it is simply not possible to co-locate on an existing facility. And so this subject property is as close to a co-location as one can get, since this property has been split from the parent parcel. So there's no borderline, there's no question or misunderstanding. It is certainly a wireless communications facility, and we did evaluate the requirement for a 1 mile separation and determine that in this case it does not apply.
In this case, it does not require a 1 mile separation?
That's correct.
Okay.
The intent of the ordinance is not met by the 1 mile separation.
Okay. I do have additional question for the applicant.
Okay, could you please come back up?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Based on that, do you have these in other locations that we could familiarize ourselves with, or have any kind of idea of what's taking place?
Probably wouldn't want to take the ride. They're typically about 40 or so of these planned, about, I don't know how many of which are already up. They're really designed strategically across the United States, and there's typically one in a given state, as I understand it. So I don't have one close by enough that you would want to go out and drive to take a look at it.
So this is the only one that you know of in the state of Georgia?
This is the only one that I know of that Viasat is planning in the state of Georgia, yes.
Okay, and, okay. I don't have anything else.
Mr. Risher?
I have a question.
Yes.
Does this facility have anything to do with communications for safety purposes, for airline safety, or is it just a service to passengers?
That's a good question. I don't have a conclusive answer about safety and its actual use. I do know, in speaking to the engineers, that its signal at traveling at the 47-degree angle, once it hits the property, it's about 221 feet in the air. So as far as safety is concerned for the signal traveling to and from the satellite, it is even safer with respect to the signal than the existing cell phone tower. But to answer your question directly about safety, I don't have enough information, and I don't want to make anything up. You were speaking about safety of the airline safety.
Yes, yes.
I imagine it could be, but I don't have any conclusive evidence that there is.
All right, thank you.
Do you know, is the client an airline or, say, a cell phone service provider like Verizon?
No, I wanted to, I'm glad you asked that question, Ms. King. This is not in any way suitable for cell phone service transmission. It's not even on the frequency that would transmit that signal. So the clients of Viasat have not been disclosed to me in detail, okay, but I believe that you're right, there are airline-related clients.
Well, I guess you wouldn't know, being that the clients has not been disclosed to you, but I guess my question would be, would it serve multiple clients, or is it just serving one particular client?
My guess, Mr. Nelson, is it would serve more than one.
Okay. And I guess that question, and it leads to the simple fact that, you know, we have one today, but what happens, you know, next week when...
The intent of your ordinance would then come into play. As staff has already mentioned, the intent of the ordinance is to make certain that any co-locatable opportunities are exhausted before a new application is approved. And in this particular case, when you have such a mammoth facility like this that's completely designed solely for satellite transfer, which is not cellular at all, it's only satellite, my guess is that you won't have very many of these in your state.
How close exactly is this to the this satellite?
Oh, it's Let me see, I think I have some information. Good question. The signal meets about 220 feet above ground, but directly. Bear with me just a second. I think I do have that information for you. Because you're getting me to talk about space distance, and I'm not very good at talking about space distance. Let's see if I have any information on that. I thought I had an answer, Mr. Nelson. I do not have a real answer for that, but it's above the surface of the Earth. That's about all I can tell you. It's in the satellite sphere, so I don't know exactly how close it would be.
Okay. But in reference to the facility that's there now, are you within 20 feet, 10 feet, or how far?
Oh, no, it's way beyond that. It's a satellite that would be beyond the Earth's surface.
I understand, but I'm speaking in terms of the actual cell tower that's there now.
Oh,
How far are
well, I'm
you
sorry. I misunderstood your question.
All right.
The cell tower itself is about 60 to 75 yards away.
Okay.
But again, just to reiterate, this is not cellular transmission. It's on a totally different frequency, and it's directed exclusively from satellite to satellite to dish, dish to satellite. That's the transmission and receiving band. It is not broadcasting a signal like a cell phone tower does. Most of what I do is cell phone towers. That's why I understand it, but it's not. Cell phone towers broadcast a signal outward. This is a direct beam straight up and straight back.
You may or may not know the answer to this question, but have you seen any adverse effect of property values due to these satellites?
None.
Is that none based on your?
That's based on me. Now, I'll say this. There's been a bigger question about value related to cell phone towers. And the reason for that is because of their intrusiveness. I don't care what you do, you're going to always see one. So that's why the codes are written to protect the communities and make sure that they keep a certain aesthetic integrity in the communities. But in the case of a satellite dish, what we've done, as I addressed in my initial comments, we wanted to make sure that we made it as innocuous as possible, as hidden as possible from all vantage points of surrounding property owners and passersby.
Okay, I don't have anything else.
Okay, so quick question.
Yes, sir.
To dovetail on what Mr. Nelson was talking about. The proximity of what you're talking about, where yours is going to be and what is already there, there's not going to be any bleed over, from what I understand. You're saying that there's no interference because it's totally different frequencies?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It is not, Mr. Peterson, it is not designed. It is wireless. It's considered a wireless communication facility by definition simply because it's transmitting a radio signal.
Okay.
However, it is not designed for the same purposes as a cell phone tower. And that's why the staff and I have agreed that this particular case is unique.
Okay, so bottom line, there's not going to be any interference, no bleed over, no interruption.
No, sir, there's not.
Okay. Any more questions for the applicant?
Yes, sir.
Is this falling, you said you work with both satellite dishes and cell towers?
Yes, yes, sir.
Is the satellite dishes falling under the same Telecommunication Act as far as the radiation and things like that?
As far as I know, they do not, because of the transmission of wireless telephone service and just the sheer proliferation of wireless telephone versus satellite. They just don't, it does not fall under the TCA is what you're speaking of.
Okay.
Because the TCA basically was designed primarily to ensure that the wireless carriers who were encountering a lot of opposition were able to do business and transmit and receive their signals for their customers. That was the intent of the TCA.
Right, but then there's the concern of irradiation for
Right.
surrounding areas.
Right.
What,
Well-
the comment comes up and the question comes up at, okay, you're doing a certain amount of volume with something and it's putting out X amount of radiation, you double, triple, quadruple that over the years, and now who's monitoring that radiation level type thing? And I'm not trying to stir up a can of worms, but
Are you asking a question about the safety of this particular facility, or?
since said you were on both sides of it.
Well, in this particular case, I did ask that question because it was raised to me. The frequency, the RF energy from the antenna is highly focused, as I've already stated, pointing from dish to satellite. And it's directly from, it's a 47-degree angle. And as I mentioned, it meets the FCC requirements because it does not cross the property line or the community until it's 220 feet in the air. So essentially, as I understand, and I'm not an engineer, I'll admit that to the board, but as I understand radio frequency and radiation, the real safety hazard is the closer proximity to human contact. In this particular case, it's farther away than what is being transmitted at the site already. So it certainly doesn't bleed into the standard of safety any more so, and even much less so than what's already on the property. And I will add this, studies, I've been doing this quite a number of years, studies have not conclusively proven that wireless communication facilities of any kind have caused any health effects to date. And the industry is about 30 years old at this point.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No more questions for the applicant or staff? Okay, call the case.
CU 1705, Viasat Incorporated of Carlsbad, California, requests a conditional use for property located at 457 Thurman Road in land lot 158 of the 12th District. The property consists of 3.00 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a wireless communication facility in District 5, and the report was presented by Zane Grinnell, Planner 1.
Is there a motion for this?
Yes, Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve based on staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Raise your hand. All opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you. You got it, Delaney?
Call the next case, please.
VR-17-15 Battery Source of Thomasville, Georgia, requests a variance from development standards for the property located at Foster Drive near Jonesboro Road in land lot 111 of the 6th District. The property consists of 0.63 plus or minus acres, and the request is retail sales. The case is located in District 3 and is presented by Stacy Jordan Rudisell, Chief Planner.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members. The case before you tonight is for a location that I'm sure that we're all familiar with. This is the Jonesboro Road exit off of I-75. The subject property is shown outlined in green, and it's hatched there. It's in the larger movie theater, shopping center, if you will, and it's proposed to be to the side of the LA Fitness. So it's between LA Fitness and the detention pond that's right there at Jonesboro Road. The zoning of the property is C2, as indicated in this red designation here. And the future land use map does show commercial for this general area. This particular case is for a variance. There's an associated case for a rezoning, which we will hear subsequently. There are 4 variances that staff has identified that's needed for the applicant to develop this subject property as it's proposed. The first is for roof pitch, the second is for road frontage, and the third is for lot size, and the fourth is for impervious surface. So if I can direct your attention to your staff report, page 3, table 2.0 lists the development standards for the subject property, and the first is for the roof pitch. This subject property is within the Highway Corridor Overlay District, and it does require a minimum of a 412 roof pitch. And at this time, I would like to illustrate some typical pictures that were provided by the applicant for what the building is proposed to look like. And so you'll notice that there's a parapet wall which hides what amounts to a flat roof, which the applicant has described as a 0.512 pitch roof. So these are typical pictures. Also, in that same table 2.0, the lot area is required to be 1 acre on sewer because the subject property is located within the Walnut Creek Watershed Protection District. And the applicant is proposing to split off 0.63 plus or minus acres from an existing lot within the shopping center. So this preliminary conceptual site plan shows the subject property in relation to this large square here, which I understand to be the LA Fitness. This is the tire shop that fronts on Foster Drive, and this parcel here, 6A and 6B. 6B is the subject property. It's actually being split off from the larger parcel 6, so this is being created. Moving along, the lot width is required to be 100 feet on sewer. It's proposed to be 115 feet, and so that does comply with the ordinance requirement. And finally, looking at the percentage impervious surface, it's limited to 25% in the Walnut Creek Watershed Protection District, and the ordinance provides for an increase in the impervious surface percentage based upon certain criteria being met, but that's limited to 75%. The applicant is actually proposing 79%. So since this is a brand new development, it seems reasonable that certain reasonable changes could be required to reduce that proposed percentage impervious down from 79% to 75%. Staff's recommendation is on page 4 of the staff report, and so we teased it out just a little bit. Because the subject property as a part of this shopping center was intended by condition to have a similar architectural style to the other buildings in this shopping center, we do recommend approval of the variance to eliminate the roof pitch requirement. And even if they provided a 412 roof pitch as required by the ordinance and still had the parapet wall, you wouldn't be able to notice the roof pitch. So we're confident in recommending approval of this variance request. Moving on, because the existing parcel, and again, we're talking about parcel 6, of which the subject property will be taken, only has frontage on the I-75 on-ramp and a small piece of Jonesboro Road where no access can be given, and they will take access through this shopping center. We're also confident recommending approval of the variance to eliminate the road frontage requirement. Moving on, because the applicant is proposing to take an existing parcel and to split that up and to take a conforming parcel and to make it non-conforming, staff does recommend denial of the variance to reduce the lot area from 1 acre to 0.63 acres. This existing parcel is less than 2 acres. And so if that variance is denied, then that parcel will not be able to be split at all. And whomever decides to develop that parcel will need to develop the entire parcel. And finally, because this is a brand-new proposed development and it's completely under the control of the applicant regarding the impervious surface percentage, we do recommend denial of a variance to reduce the maximum impervious surface ratio from the 75% that they could gain under the ordinance if they meet certain provisions to 79%.
Okay. All right, does the board have any questions for staff?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, Mr. Rich.
Could you explain again about the 75%
Yes, sir.
for the impervious surface?
Yes, sir. So this subject property is located within the Walnut Creek Watershed Protection District, and it typically requires a maximum of 25% impervious, but if access to the detention facilities are deeded and certain requirements by the stormwater department are met, then that impervious surface can be expanded from 25 up to 75%. And the proposed development is really close to that. It's at 79%. So it seems reasonable that they could pare that down from 79% to 75%.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Now, Stacy, if this proposed lot is divided, can they actually use the other lot?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Part of the uniqueness of this is that they are requesting a rezoning. And so that will, in effect, wipe away the existing zoning conditions, and they'll be replaced with new zoning conditions. So whatever development standards they would have enjoyed under, for example, a development agreement or a set of conditions that would be applicable to the shopping center as a whole would be lost, but not for the remainder of the subject property. It could continue to be developed under the existing development agreement or set of conditions of zoning.
But staff is recommending denial of the variance due to?
Yes, due to the fact that they are proposing to take a conforming lot and to render it non-conforming. That's correct.
Gotcha. All right.
Okay, I have another question. Now, the reason that they're applying for C3 is that they will have some outside display or storage area. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And if I'm reading the site plan right, that would be in that small rectangular area that's at the front of the building. Is that where their storage would be?
Yes, sir. That is my understanding. And so the use of the property, in addition to storage or display, would be for the sale of golf carts.
Right.
And so those are considered vehicles and would require a C3.
Okay, now when you came up with the 75% factor, did you consider this area that's between the private street and the edge of the storage area, which I guess would be a concrete surface? Did you include that to come up with the 79%?
Mr. Risher, I have to tell you, I relied on the applicant to tell me what the impervious surface percentage would be. And so if that area is indeed impervious, then I just have to trust the applicant to have included that.
Okay, because that probably would be a landscaped area as well as a little strip of land that's on the side of the parking lot and also behind the parking lot to the rear, to the rear. So those would be landscaped areas.
Yes, sir.
So, but maybe that's a question for the applicant.
Yes, sir.
Does the board have anyone else have any questions for staff? Okay, at this time, we'd like the applicant to come forward, please. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Ross Glass, and I'm representing Battery Source. The address is 104 Genesis Parkway in Thomasville, Georgia.
Okay, would you like to add anything to staff recommendations or anything you have to add?
We appreciate staff recommending the 2 variances that they did, but we would like to ask the board to recommend the other 2 that staff did not recommend. The impervious surface, Wayne is the engineer. He could probably explain it a little bit better than I can. I sell batteries.
Okay, all right.
Good evening. I'm Wayne Smith, D.W. Smith Design Group, located at 23 Hampton Street, downtown McDonough. And I've had the privilege of working with the good folks at Battery Source. This is actually the 4th site they have considered in Henry County. And just through a series of events have not been able to locate here yet. So they've been working hard to be a part of our community. We believe that we appreciate the staff report, and I will tell you that I calculated the amount of pervious and impervious area off of this site plan, and as suggested, basically it's curb line to curb line, and anything left over is being proposed as landscaping. There's several things that I believe are unique in this setting as it relates to lot size and impervious cover. My experience in the industry, and certainly I don't have the years of experience of Mr. Risher and others here on this board, but frankly, many of those numerical criteria for minimum lot size and percentage of impervious cover came years ago before there was a thing called the Georgia Stormwater Management Manual, which prescribes specific techniques and measures to be used, particularly in watershed protection districts, to protect the water quality. For years, we've done detention, which addresses water quantity, but Henry County adopted those standards in 2004, and it's my contention, and others may have a different opinion, is that these numerical standards are frankly a holdover from days gone by before we had not only the ability but the requirement to provide water quality and water quantity treatment on a site-by-site, case-by-case basis. We can't build anything in Henry County without complying with those regulations. Coupled with that is the fact that we're in a master shopping center which has a master stormwater facility. So any runoff that leaves our site is not going immediately into the watershed. It's frankly going into the large existing master detention pond. That pond has been designed, it's serving a large enough area that under the requirements of that stormwater manual, you're actually allowed to establish a permanent pool. And in doing so, the intent of that is that the sediment and the heavy metals and the things that would routinely be washed off of a paved parking impervious area, buildings and parking, during a rainfall event actually settle, and because of the permanent pool, they're not re-agitated every time you get a rainfall event. That's one of the tools, that's one of the mechanisms, one of the criteria in this manual that frankly applies across the metro Atlanta area. Whether we have 25% impervious cover or 80% impervious cover, the reality is we're required to treat it properly and store it properly so that the downstream properties are not impacted negatively as a result of this development. The other, one of the other things is the idea of lot size. This, as we've shared with Stacy, we again appreciate him, have worked with him through the years. So the reality is we have a landlord who has, as he indicated, a parcel that is slightly under 2 acres. And I think, in all honesty, their intent, I can't speak for them, but I believe the intent was to try to find a viable use for a small enough piece of property that the remnant, because of the irregular shape with the detention pond and the on-ramp for I-75, which really restricts some development because of that irregular shape, that if they could sell a parcel that the county would accept that's smaller, it frankly leaves them a larger parcel, which gives them a greater probability to land a viable business to locate there as well. Certainly, the owner of the shopping center wants to see all their spaces utilized. They want to sell that property. Certainly, the county would prefer to see businesses that are generating jobs and tax revenue as opposed to vacant parcels that have been there for quite some time. Another factor as it relates to the minimum lot size, what's different here is we don't have public rights of way that take away from our ability to use the property. All of the parcels obtain their access through easements, so it is private property, privately maintained, and the easements allow for the flow of traffic over and across those streets and across adjacent parcels. I would ask you to note that in the site plan presented as the concept plan, by the seller's wishes and the operators of the center, we're required to connect our proposed parking to the existing parking of Kaufman Tire. Similarly, we're required to make provision for any future user. If another user came in and purchased and developed the remnant, we would be required, and we are proposing to make revision for them to connect to our parking as well. And again, that part of the intent there is if as businesses, their peak loading changes from different times of the day depending on the business, what this accomplishes is essentially providing overflow parking. So each of the parcels actually has these easements that give greater flexibility. And I believe those are unique characteristics that allow a smaller than standard lot size to still function safely and effectively and to meet the intent, I believe, of what the ordinances require. At this point, I've shared a lot of information. I'm going to stop. We're here to answer any questions and try to help clarify any issues that you may have.
Okay. Does any of the board members have any questions?
Yes, I have some questions, or maybe I've gone out and looked at this site several times, and I did a little rough calculation, and I could be off a little bit, but it would take about 68 feet of additional, property to make this site add up to 1 acre. And it seems to me that when you do that, then you kind of diminish the size of parcel 6A, which would be the remnant, as you call it, which would make it very difficult for them to even get a driveway because you have that curve in the road that goes to the to the fitness center, and also you've got a manhole and a catch basin, which would probably limit them to one driveway if they could get that in. So that's and then you've got the large detention basin behind all these parcels on Jonesboro Road. So I think that that there may be some constraining factors, that would affect, anything that's built in this particular area.
And Mr. Risher, I congratulate you on your arithmetic. I came up with the same figure for how much would be required of additional width.
Well,
And so
great minds
we're
work in the same direction.
we're in full agreement there, and thankfully nobody's changed how many square feet are in an acre. One thing, a few other points I would like to address. First of all, understand that the adjacent existing parcel, Kaufman Tire, is also less than an acre. Now, it's 9/300 of an acre, but the fact remains the existing business that is there today does not meet the code requirement for a minimum of 1 acre. Nothing within that shopping center comes close to meeting a 25% maximum impervious cover. Some very quick estimates and calculations indicate that the existing facilities, that being Kaufman Tire, LA Fitness, Regal Cinemas, all are in the 80 to 90% impervious cover range. So we come before you fully aware of the codes. We're not ignoring them. We're not trying to just steamroll our way through. But it would seem somewhat peculiar to me to hold this facility to a standard that frankly none of the adjacent parcels have been held to. And given the fact that the stormwater requirements do exist now, those were adopted by the county in 2004. So I believe there's adequate protection both for the immediate downstream, and obviously being a former council member for the city of McDonough, I can appreciate protecting their reservoir, which is in the Walnut Creek Protection District. So we certainly are not desiring or intending or believing that our development would be detrimental to the downstream watershed.
Does any other board members have questions for the applicant? Okay, at this time, we'd like to allot, you may be seated, sir, we'd like to allot the remaining time for anyone speaking in favor of the case. Anyone speaking in favor of the case? Okay, if no one's coming forward, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for those wishing to speak in opposition of this case. 10 minutes for those wishing to speak in opposition. Okay, if no one's coming forward, any of the board members have any additional questions for the applicant? Okay. If not, we can call the case.
VR-17-15 Battery Source of Thomasville, Georgia, request a variance from development standards for the property located at Foster Drive near Jonesboro Road in landline 111 of the 6th District. The property consists of 0.63 plus or minus acres, and the request is retail sales. The property is located in District 3, and the case was presented by Stacy Jordan Rudisil, Chief Planner.
Okay, you've heard the case. Do I have a motion?
Yes, sir. I would like to make a motion which has 4 parts to it. First, it would be to approve the variance to eliminate the roof pitch requirement as recommended by staff. Second, to approve the variance to eliminate the road frontage requirement. Second, or thirdly, to approve the lot area variance to 0.63 plus or minus acres, and to approve the variance to increase the percentage of the impervious surface above 25%, and actually that would be to make it 4% over the 75% that's allowable because of the on-site and off-site stormwater detention facilities.
Okay. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a second by Ms. King. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay. Call the next case, please.
RZ-17-14, Battery Source of Thomasville, Georgia, requests a rezoning from C2 General Commercial to C3 Highway Commercial for the property located at Foster Drive near Jonesboro Road in Land Lot 111 of the 6th District. The property consists of .63 plus or minus acres, and the request is for retail sales. The property is located in District 3, and the case will be presented by Chief Planner Stacy Jordan Rudisil.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members. This is the corresponding case from our last hearing. This request is for a rezoning to change the zoning for the subject property from C2 General Commercial to C3 Highway Commercial. And this subject property is illustrated on the overhead. I'll note that the future land use map, which is our policy guide, calls for commercial for the subject property and for the surrounding area. And this area is becoming built up already with commercial development. Staff has evaluated the applicant's request, and we've noted that with certain conditions of zoning, that it seems to be appropriate to recommend approval of the rezoning from C2 to C3. And so we do recommend approval with the 6 conditions that are located within the staff report.
Okay. All right. Does any of the board members have any questions for staff? Okay. At this time, we'd like to ask the applicant to come forward, please. Okay. Do you have anything additional that you would like to add to staff recommendation?
Said the only reason why we're asking from rezoning from C2 to C3 is just for the sale of the golf carts. Code requires it.
Okay.
We just want to be able to display them and sell them as part of our business model.
Okay.
I would, and staff has recommended approval of the rezoning, so this point may be moot, but I would just point out that frankly, the existing use adjacent at Kaufman Tire, although zone C2 is in actuality a more intensive use than what's being proposed as a retail facility. But again, we understand and recognize that the code requires the C3. We appreciate the staff support. I will confess I have not seen the conditions of zoning that are being proposed, and on the applicant's behalf, we would ask to see those before the board takes action.
Mr. Chair, I have those conditions here.
Okay.
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 I see staff is recommending that the only C3 highway commercial used to be permitted on this property would be for golf cart sales and services. Is that acceptable to the applicant?
Say that again, please.
Stacy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that I think that you're recommending that this be limited only to the golf cart sales and services. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. You're absolutely right. Any C1 or C2 use would be permitted, and the only use that would require C3 that would be allowed would be for the golf cart sales. So yes, sir, you're absolutely correct.
That was the only thing that pushed us over to needing C3 zoning.
Right.
Was the sale and service of the golf cars.
Right, that's because of the outside storage and display. Mm-hmm.
Correct. Correct. And I think actually the vehicle itself, the actual sale of the vehicle itself.
Yes, sir. And Mr. Risher, you're absolutely correct. It's the sale of the vehicle, but also if it was to be considered outdoor storage, that would also require a C3.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions? Any additional questions? Okay, if there's no additional question, you may be seated, please. We'd like to allot the remaining time for anyone like to speak in favor of this case. Okay, if no one's coming forward, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in opposition of it. No one's coming forward. Does the board have any additional questions for staff or the applicant? Okay. If not, we'd like to call the case.
RZ-17-14, Battery Source of Thomasville, Georgia, request of rezoning from C2, General Commercial, to C3, Highway Commercial, for the property located at Foster Drive near Jonesboro Road in Land Lot 111 of the 6th District. The property consists of .63 plus or minus acres, and the request is for retail sales. The property is located in District 3, and the case was presented by Chief Planner Stacy Jordan Rudisil.
Okay, we've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that the C3 zoning be approved with the condition that, first of all, that all C1 and C2 permitted uses may be allowed. The only C3 a permitted use is for golf cart sales and service. Second, that the subject property as approved shall be bound by the Shops at Henry Crossing Master Sign Plan, and that the subject property shall be reviewed and it shall be subject to approval as a replat to the Shops of Henry Crossing development.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, we have a second.
Question. We're dropping the last three requirements. Yes, 4, 5, and 6.
Any discussion?
Are we dropping those last 3, 4, 5, and 6? We only read the first 3.
Now that's a question for Mr. Richard. He's asking, are we dropping the last requirements, the 4, 5, and 6 of the county recommendation?
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, let me turn the page.
Okay.
And then as part of that motion, items 4, 5, and 6 in the staff report will be added, to the motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Just to clarify things, we have a motion on the table to approve the.
I think we've got to get rid of the second first to go backwards.
Well, we have a motion on the table to approve it based on county recommendations with the 6 recommendations. Is that correct? Okay. Now, is that second based on that? Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I could be recognized, I just want to state for the record, condition number 5, the last part states, and shall comply with the Highway Corridor Overlay District Development Standards. It was the intent of staff to mean comply by variance or by ordinance so that it would not preclude the variance that they were just given, which is your roof pitch requirement.
Okay. Now, is that different from the motion?
No, I just wanted to make that clarification.
Okay, thank you. All right. We have a second and a motion. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Call the next case, please.
VR 17-17, Invictus Development of Tampa, Florida, request a variance from development standards for the property located at 4205 West Village Parkway in land lots 186 and 199 of the 12th District. The property consists of 6.73 plus or minus acres, and the request is for multifamily residential development. The property is located in District 5, and the case will be presented by Chief Planner Stacy Jordan Rudisil.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members. The request before you at this time is for a subject property located on West Village Parkway, which was formerly known as West Panola Road. It's illustrated on the overhead. It's outlined in green and hatched in green. The zoning of the property at this time is RA, residential agricultural, and there will be a subsequent hearing to evaluate the request to change the future land use map and also to change the zoning. The future land use map at this time calls for a low-density residential development. The applicant is proposing a multifamily residential development at 16 dwelling units per acre. The applicant has stated in the letter of intent that this development will be marketed to seniors 62 and older, and so their variance request is to reduce the code's parking requirement from 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit to 1 parking space per dwelling unit. Staff has evaluated the applicant's request, and the ordinance is very strict when it comes to how we can make recommendations. The ordinance actually states that we should find that each one of the criteria points that are in the staff report would be met, and we have not found that to be the case. And so it's my conclusion that to provide the 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit may indeed be a hardship for this development, but it's not an undue hardship. And so staff recommends denial of the applicant's request.
Okay. Any board members have any questions for staff?
Not at this time.
Okay. I'm going to ask the applicant to come forward. Please state your name and your address. You have 10 minutes to state your case.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Doug Dillard with Pursley, Freese, and Torgerson, and we represent the applicant. I also have with me tonight representatives of the applicant Invictus, Rick Cavaliera, who's going to sort of take you through a PowerPoint presentation of what we're trying to do on this property. Arthur Bright with Bright Communities, and Bradley Riffle with AEC, who is the site designer. So they're available here to answer any questions you might have. As Stacy said, these are 3 related applications. This is a variance to reduce the parking requirement from 2 to 1 per unit. We're proposing 112 units on this property. Just to get a little bit ahead of myself, the staff is also recommending approval of the comp plan change and the zoning in order to allow for this development. So that is going to be heard afterwards. You are the final arbiter on variances, and it's my understanding that that's why you hear variance first rather than hearing the variance after you hear the zoning and the comp plan change. So, and the zoning and comp plan change are then recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. So I'm going to call on Rick to sort of go through what we intend to do on this property. This is a development that they have done throughout the country. They have provided you 5 traffic and parking studies that show that the need for parking at 2 parking spaces per unit is excessive. You'll have parking out there on or undue impervious surface where you could be using it for gardens and other things, and that the need for this as a senior housing facility really doesn't require for the type of parking requirements that the code calls for. I will go over those criteria after Rick sort of introduces the project for you. We disagree with staff. We think we have met all the criteria for the variance. And at this time, I'll call on Rick.
Thank you. My name is Rick Cavalieri with Invictus Development. We're out of Tampa, Florida. My address is 2002 North Lois Avenue in Tampa. I just wanted to introduce, this project is, or development I should say, is related to the Nidus development. The owners of the property are Nidus, and you're probably familiar with their medical facility and retail facility that they have put on West Village Drive. They so far have completed the urgent care facility that has been open since, I believe, April, And the owners of Nidus would like to get a senior facility in that area just to help seed their facility. And they plan an medical office building and an ambulatory surgery center also in that location, as well as some townhomes. You probably went through the whole zoning situation for that. I can go through a PowerPoint presentation quickly of what we're going to be proposing out there. Our development team, we're trying to use as many local people as we can. Martin Riley Architects are out of Decatur. They've done quite a number of seniors. I have a couple of slides to show representative buildings that they've produced in the area. AEC Engineering did the engineering for the Fairview project, so they're very familiar with this site. Royal American Construction, Royal American Property Management. Royal American manages about 18 properties in the greater Atlanta area. In fact, they manage 2 in Henry County, and they've included a letter in your packet to show the parking ratios of those 2 in Henry County, which are 1.0781 and 1.1060. So you have some precedent in the county already, and both of those are senior developments for reducing the parking ratios in the county. I've also included a number of parking studies from various areas in the country, including one that we did for a senior facility in Largo, Florida, where we actually monitored the parking ratios for the city and found that really the ratio necessary was 0.53. In most cases, you're going to see about a 0.7 ratio for senior facilities. And again, that depends on the environment. If it's a more urban where they have transportation, the requirement could be lower. Where it's more rural, the requirement could be a little bit higher. In the Henry County situation, you don't have public transportation, but you have a pay-per-ride transportation. 62-year and older seniors can get a ride to most local facilities for $2, and that's curb-to-curb service. So that is available to the residents. Let me go. This is just these are some representative developments that we have done, and all of these are in Florida. The one on the upper left is one that we did in Largo, and that's a 4-story facility. What we're proposing here is a 3-story facility, all interior corridor, all air conditioned. And the other part, as it relates to the parking, is 60% of these units are 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 40% 2 bedroom, 2 bath. So the way the Henry County parking ordinance works is you just have one ratio, 2-to-1 for apartments. And it really doesn't make sense that you're looking at a 5-bedroom unit the same way as you're looking at a 1-bedroom senior unit. So this is a picture of the Nidus proposed site plan development. And again, the site that we have, if you look on the upper left-hand side, you see a retention pond. The site we're proposing for this facility is just behind that retention pond. And the road, Panola, is scheduled to be widened. I think we'll have that discussion later. The actual site is 7.1 acres. The surveyor took it on himself to reduce the lot size a little bit, but we would like to consider the entire 7.1 acres for our density. At some point, there'll be a portion of the site that will have to be given up for right-of-way.
When you go back to that and point to where you're saying it's located, behind the retention pond?
It's in the upper left. If
Okay.
I don't know how I would point on this, but
At the turn there where you see the blue in the far left, next to the yellow, that's the site. We have a,
Okay.
but it's on the, Mr. Chairman, it's on the far left of the
upper left.
Development, upper left.
Okay.
As you look at it.
I got you.
Fairview is the road on the right that curves, and then as you go through West Village Drive, goes through the development, Panola comes in and joins West Village, and then they continue on.
Okay.
So
It's right there at that intersection.
This is the proposed site plan that we have. The site has some topography in it where it slopes down in the back. That's where the retention pond, and we're also having to channel the retention from the Nidus development through the property. So that's why you see that, but you can see the development, the parking. This takes into account the additional right-of-way that will be required. There is a drive to the right side of the property that actually services another gentleman's property that's farther back, and he has an easement to use that. So that will remain, and the actual entrance to the property will be right off of that drive. We will, I'm sure, have to improve that road because it's essentially a single lane road right now to get into the property. This particular development we're proposing is a mixed income property where we're going to have some reduced rents. We're going to use a portion of the property will be tax credit units, and then there'll be market rate units. So it'll be a somewhat diverse income mix for seniors in that area. Here is an example of a senior facility that was designed by Martin Riley. The upper left, you can see that would give you an idea, although that's a 4-story facility. I think the next one is a 3-story facility. Similar idea, but that would give you excuse me? Okay, that would give you a good feel. And essentially for the variance, you have a one-size-fits-all ordinance. 80% of the units are affordable, so less cars. Out of time. So.
No problem. Hey, so we have any questions for?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you've listed this as a senior facility. What do you do to ensure that it stays a senior facility, or ensure that we don't need these parking spaces in the future?
Well, we have restrictions through our financing that it has to remain a senior facility for the entire period. So it'd be a 30-year restriction on that for the entire financing period. Because part of this is going to be funded through a HUD 221, I don't want to get too technical, HUD 221D4 loan, okay, which requires the 62 and older designation.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have as of now.
Any more questions for the applicant, board members? Okay.
Just to add to that, you can make that a condition as well, that it's 62 and older. It's a senior facility.
Hold on.
Does your proposed, parking adjustment or variance now, does this take into account any administrative staff or maintenance staff, say that would be working at this complex, that would be servicing the people that will live there?
Well, we feel that 1-to-1 is more than adequate parking. Honestly, I didn't get to the slide, but we've built other developments, senior developments at 0.7, et cetera. Some particular places want 1-to-1 plus employee parking and even some visitor parking. So it just depends on the area. We probably will have 3 to 4 staff in this facility, a full-time property manager, a part-time property manager, and at least 1 maintenance person.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, you may be seated. And seeing that we have no more time for the speaking in agreement with it, we will go to the speaking in opposition. Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition to this proposal? Anyone want to speak in opposition? Final call if anybody wants to speak in opposition. Okay. Board members have any further questions for the applicant or staff?
This is a question for staff. Stacy, would the county have any problems with this variance if it's definitely approved that there's no one living there other than seniors?
Mr. Nelson, it seems very reasonable, but I don't know that the code provides for a reduction in the requirement for parking based upon the limitation of age. Even though it seems most appropriate, I don't think that's provided for in the code.
And that brings about a question. I do have another question now for the applicant. Will you please come forward? Thank you. Based on that, you guys have indicated that you've built these facilities throughout in other locations, and you've met those requirements, or it's been reduced due to the fact that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, we've submitted to you 5 studies that have been done, and I know you probably just got them today, so you hadn't had a chance to really look at them. But we've got parking ratios in senior communities that was dated August the 17th of 2015. Wisteria plays, there's some number of senior facilities, and they all have ratios of less than one space per unit, and that's in your packet. We've given you a copy of that. Also, there was another study, Rick. We had five studies that we also put in your packet. Here they are. Pinellas House, there was Pinellas Heights parking study, a City of San Diego affordable parking study. Number 3 is a nonprofit housing association in Northern California, said rethinking residential parking myths and facts. 4, the senior housing trip generation and parking demand characters by Stephen B. Corcoran, and the parking requirements guide for affordable housing developers. Also, I think there's some examples, and Rick mentioned it, of existing senior facilities in Henry County and in the Atlanta area that have ratios less than 2 to 1. I'll state in my place that we've been doing a good bit of this the last 4 or 5 years, and they're around one plus employee parking. You do want to cover employee parking. You do want to take care of visitors that are coming to see them. Okay, but we have found that a 1-to-1 ratio is adequate.
Okay. I don't have anything else.
Any more board members have any questions for the applicant or for staff? You may be seated. Any more questions? Anything? We're good? Okay, call the case.
VR-17-17, Invictus Development of Tampa, Florida requests a variance from development standards for property located at 4205 West Village Parkway in land lots 186 and 199 of the 12th District. The property consists of 6.73 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a multifamily residential development located in District 5, and the case was presented by Chief Planner Stacy Jordan Rudisil.
This case?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the variance allowing the reduction in the parking spaces with the condition that this facility maintains as a senior facility 62 and older.
You got a second? Any discussion? Any discussion? No discussion? All in favor? Raise your hand. All opposed? Okay. Would you call the next case?
COMP-AM-17-07, Invictus Development of Tampa, Florida, requests an amendment to the comprehensive plan for the property located at 4205 West Village Parkway in land lots 186 and 199 of the 12th District. The property consists of 6.73 plus or minus acres, and the request is to amend the future land use map from low-density residential to high-density residential to support a density exceeding 16 dwelling units per acre net. The property is located in District 5 and will be presented by Chief Planner Stacy Jordan Rudisil.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Chair, board members. This is the corresponding comp plan amendment to change the future land use map for the subject property. And again, you'll note the location, please, on the overhead, Karis. And this is also in your exhibit books, that the zoning of the property is RA, but immediately to the east is the Nidus development that was indicated. And so this is a more intensive zoning than what was anticipated by the future land use map, which was adopted in 2009. So the future land use map is illustrated. It shows this whole area as being low-density residential in the future. And of course, we've gotten past that. The subject property, as well as the property in the immediate area, are included in the Fairview Road Overlay District. And this overlay district anticipates a more dense type of development with higher densities to support the corresponding commercial. Also, if we look at the policies that are in the text of the comprehensive plan, and I'm looking specifically at our evaluation on page 2 of the staff report, these policies are intended to ensure that new developments represent opportunities to provide stronger senses of place. And it's encouraging the creation of clusters of close-knit development. And so this is exactly what this subject property seems to offer. And so having evaluated the merits of this request, staff does recommend approval of the applicant's request to change the future land use map designation from low-density residential to high-density residential.
Thank you. Do any board members have any questions for staff?
I do have one question for staff. Stacy, can you indicate where I just don't remember where the overlay district actually stop or start in that particular area, right at that area. I know it's pretty close, or it may be.
It's very close. This blue line here, it approximates the town center character area. The subject property and some of the environs around it are included in the conventional subdivision, I think it's conventional subdivision character area of the overlay district.
Okay, all right. That is.
Any more board members, questions for staff? Okay. I'm going to ask the applicant to come back up, and please state your name again and your address.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for the record, I'm Doug Dillard with Purdy, Freeze and Torgerson, and I, along with Rick Cavallari, represent the applicant. And we also, as I pointed out earlier, we have Arthur Bright and the engineers here to answer any questions that you might have. We support the staff's recommendation of approval. I think they've done a good job of analyzing it. This is a unique piece of property that lays within a higher density development along Panola Road, and this provides adequate transformation into the lower density areas to the west. And we think that given that this would be appropriate, and since the parking variance was approved, we would hope that you would go forward with the comp plan amendment in accordance with staff's recommendations. We're available to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Okay. Any board members got any questions for the applicant? No questions for the applicant? Okay. You may be seated. Is there anybody that would like to speak in favor of this case? Anybody want to speak in favor of this case? Final call. Anybody want to speak in opposition of this case? Final call for anybody wanting to speak in opposition of this case. Okay. Any more questions for staff at all? Okay. All right, we'll call the case.
COMP 8-AM-17-07, Invictus Development of Tampa, Florida, requests an amendment to the comprehensive plan for the property located at 4205 West Village Parkway in land lots 186 and 199 of the 12th District. The property consists of 6.73 plus or minus acres, and the request is to amend the future land use map from low-density residential to high-density residential to support a density exceeding 16 dwelling units per acre net. This property is located in District 5 and was presented by Chief Planner Stacy Jordan Rudisill.
All right, we heard this case. Is there a motion?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion to approve the ordinance from low density to high density based on staff recommendation.
Okay. We've had a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Any discussion? Okay, no discussion. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, thank you. Would you please call the next case?
RZ-17-17, Invictus Development of Tampa, Florida, requests a rezoning from RA Residential Agricultural to RM Multifamily Residential for property located at 4205 West Village Parkway in land lot 199 of the 12th District. The property consists of 6.73 plus or minus acres, and the request is for multifamily residential development located in District 5, and the case will be presented by Chief Planner Stacy Jordan Rudisill.
Good evening, Chair.
Thank you.
Board members. Again, this is the corresponding rezoning hearing for the subject property. Subject property is indicated in the green here on the overhead and also in your exhibit books. I would just like to point out, to direct your attention again to the immediate property to the east, that this is the Nidus development, and this was approved for C2 type uses, and it's becoming developed as we speak. Future land use map appears to be a bit outdated if you compare the zoning with the types of land uses that were anticipated at the time in 2009. And if I could also make a plug that we are beginning the process of updating this map, and so we recognize that there may be some inconsistencies. From the last hearing, we had a question about the the Fairview Road Overlay District. In this immediate area of the subject property, this blue line, it approximates the town center character area that's within the larger overlay. And if I recall correctly, the boundaries of the overlay go along Bowden down to West Village Parkway and then up to the subject property, and that this is part of the residential character area and not the conventional suburban character areas was mentioned in the last hearing. So it's consistent with the provisions of the overlay that anticipates a greater density and intensity of development. Staff has evaluated the applicant's request based upon the criteria points in the ordinance, and we do recommend approval with 6 conditions.
Okay. Do any board members have any questions for staff?
I do have a question, Stacy. That was a question that was presented to me in terms of condition 4. The development shall be developed as a gated community that will be maintained and monitored by the owner of the property and at their expenses. is that a county requirement that is developed as a gated community?
No, sir, that is not a county requirement. If that's something that the board wishes to recommend, that condition may be included. If that's not necessary in the board's estimation, that condition can be left out.
Okay, all right. Condition 4, okay. I don't have anything else at this point.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. That noted, applicant, please come back up, state your name and address.
Fine, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Doug Dillard with Persley, Freeze and Torgerson, and once again, we have our development team here to answer any questions that you might have. We support the staff's recommendation, but Mr. Nelson, we sort of question also why we have to have a gated community. We're not sure whether we're supposed to keep our folks in or keep other folks out. We've got other senior facilities throughout the country that really don't necessarily need a gated community, particularly where you've got visiting hours and that kind of thing when you'd have to be responsible for getting them open. The other thing that I ran into recently in Brookhaven was with the gated community, if you have an emergency or if you have ambulance service, you got to be able to get into that gate, through that gate, and that creates a problem for emergency services and emergency vehicles. So we would prefer that not be in the recommendations. All the other conditions are acceptable to us, and we think the staff's done a very good job of analyzing the zoning request. But that's a condition that we would like not recommended to the Board of Commissioners. Other than that, we're available to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, I do have a question in terms of that. In the past, have your properties, or are you saying that you have not included the gates in your properties, or have you?
I'm going to let Rick answer that, Ms. Nelson.
Okay.
Rick Cavallari with Invictus Development. We have never done a senior development as a gated community. This is independent living. It's not an ALF or a nursing home or anything else. These are independent where they can come and go at their pleasure. Okay. And we've never felt the need to have gates and never done them.
Okay. All right. And I guess the next question in terms of this is that what's the time span of this project? Do we have a time span when you plan to break ground? How long will it take to?
Well, right now, pending the board and the commission's approval, probably fall of next year. Mm-hmm. And it's about a 15-month construction period, so we're probably looking at fourth quarter of 2019.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. Any additional questions for the applicant? If not, you may be seated. Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this case? Final call for anybody wanting to speak in favor of this case. Okay. With that noted, 10 minutes for anybody that wants to speak in opposition of this case. Okay, final call for anybody wanting to speak in opposition of this case. Okay, board, any more questions for applicants or staff?
I do for staff. Why was the gated recommendation added? Where did that come from?
Because it is not a requirement of the ordinance, if you wish to see a gated community, it would have to be a condition of zoning. And we're aware that many of the gated communities exhibit high quality. And so we wanted to make that an option for you if that's something that you definitely wanted to see.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions? If not, let's call the case.
RZ-17-17 Invictus Development of Tampa, Florida requests a rezoning from RA Residential Agricultural to RM Multifamily Residential for a property located at 4205 West Village Parkway in land lots 186 and 199 of the 12th District. The property consists of 6.73 plus or minus acres, and the request is for multifamily residential development in District 5. The case was presented by Chief Planner Stacy Jordan Rudisil.
Okay, we've heard the case. Is there a motion?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the rezoning from RA to RM with exception to condition 4 of staff recommendation, including the gated community.
Okay. Is there a second?
A second?
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, would you raise your hand? All opposed? Okay. Mr. Chair.
Okay. I think that concludes our cases. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.